What's up YouTube? Today we're going to take a look at the difference between the where and having keyword in SQL. Let's get into it. So in this video I wanted to go through the differences of where and having in SQL, why it's important, why it's being asked, what's the theory behind where, what's the theory behind having, what's the practical difference between the two, and how do you realize when you're supposed to use it. So if you've been going through some of my videos, you've probably heard me mentioning that having is used to filter on aggregate functions. So you can use it to filter on an average, a count, a sum, or anything else. A where filter, I always call it filter, is just used to filter on static columns that already exist in your table, something like an ID, something like a state, something like a country, depends on the data set, but something that doesn't change, is not aggregated yet. Whereas having can be used to filter on something after you've already done something with it. After you've already counted something, you can then filter on that count, for example. I think that's the theoretical difference. Let's get into an example real quick to kind of make it more practical and obvious. So we're going to head on over to LeetCode, to one of my favorite questions. I used to ask this as an interview question myself, which brings me to why this is being asked. Basically, a lot of people try to use where when they should use having, and the difference between the two is something that can make you filter out candidates or kind of recognize candidates that are experts or not experts. You can kind of distinguish between them by asking that type of question, and that's why it's one of my favorites. So this one is called classes more than 5 students. I already went through this on my channel. If you want to see the full video, I'm going to link it down below. But this one has a very simple table called courses, which contains student and class as fields. Basically, which student is in which class, and the task is to find classes that contain at least 5 students, so 5 or more. So what you would be doing in this case is to select the class and get a count of the students. Preferably use distinct to get rid of duplicates. Selecting that from that table courses, and in order to count the students you need to group by class, so you're counting per class. So if I run this, I'm going to get a count for each class, and it's going to be 1 for biology, 1 for computer, 1 for English, but 6 for math. So math is the only class that has more than 5 students, or at least 5 students. And now we just have to filter that out somehow. So what you might be thinking of doing is just to use a where filter and say that should be greater or equal to 5. Spoiler alert, that doesn't work because you can't use where on aggregate functions. Count is an aggregate function because it aggregates this column student. And that's something I used to try to do when I started out learning SQL, and it's very natural to do that because why wouldn't you be able to filter on that new field you create? But the thing is, at the point where you try to filter on this, it hasn't even been calculated yet. So in order to filter on something that still needs to be calculated, you have to use a different keyword for SQL to be able to know that. Now, I've been reading up on this a bit more, and W3 Schools, which is one of the best resources on learning anything related to programming in general on the internet, has this explanation, this one sentence saying the having clause was added to SQL because the where keyword cannot be used with aggregate functions. And that's exactly what I just tried to do. Because, yeah, it gets confusing. What if you have another where filter in there where you say students, imagine there's another column in there, students who are at this university or this school. Only filter to that. So are you going to count before that? Are you going to count after that? It's confusing. So the way to solve this is to either take an extra step and create a subquery. Make this a subquery, call it class counts, and say select class from that, and now you would be able to use where give that one a name, where class count is greater or equal than to 5. And it's really important for you to notice the difference here. This is going to run, this is going to work. I'm doing the same thing, I'm using where, but in this case, I'm looking at a new table, the one which we just created in the step before when I last ran this. The table was just biology 1, English 1, computer 1, math 6. So because it has already been evaluated, that would mean class count is a static field, which we can just refer to using the where filter. So nothing's going to be aggregated here. This aggregation has already taken place inside the subquery and has finished, and we're just going to run something on top of that. Now, if we want to do this in one step, and that's the most elegant way of doing it, and what you would be supposed to do, ideally do in the interview, would be to use having, then use this class count, and say it should be greater or equal than to 5. Greater or equal to 5. Yes, so that would just filter on this aggregate function directly without having to use the subquery, because the having keyword allows you to do that after the aggregation. Now you need to have class in your group by, because that's what the count depends on. Another thing you can do using having, which might be confusing, so you can ignore this for now, but you would be able to filter on class here because it's in the group by. You could say class should be math, and it would give you the same result. I'm kind of just manually filtering it to math now. And yeah, you would also be able to use it in a where, but that would have to come before the group by. And that's that. I've never really used it that way. In theory, this should also run. You're just filtering on it twice, which is confusing. But yeah, the solution I was looking for would have been this. You can make it really short by removing that count, because you're not displaying it. You're just trying to display the actual class name that has at least 5 students. And yeah, if we run this, this should actually be the accepted solution. And it's going to be really short, really elegant, really simple. A cool thing to do, a cool question would be something that combines where and having, where you would have to use where somewhere here and say where university is Oxford or something, if there would be another column. And then you would do both, use where and having in the same question, and that would be a great exercise. Now, one more thing I wanted to go through is the order of operations. In SQL, I always remember this and come back to it like it's the alphabet, where I just go through the order of keywords in SQL. So the order would be select from where, group by, having, order by. You're going to select from where, then you're going to group by if you want to aggregate, and then after you aggregate you would be able to use having dependent on the group by, and then in the end, when you kind of have your output already, you can use order by to order by a specific column, some aggregated column even, and yeah, that aggregated column might have been used in the having clause, and there might have been a filter on it, just as we did in this case. So I hope this video made sense. I'm going to link to this question right here. I'm going to link to StrataScratch as well. There's another question that I also went through on this channel, so I'm going to link to the video and to the problem, and you can give those a try and see whether you can use having in practice. Also going to link the W3 Schools resources and another introduction by Microsoft, and then there's one more video by Alex the Analyst, who also went through the difference between where and having, which I found useful as well. So my plan in general these days is to go through some of the most important SQL concepts, general concepts, and then give an example by going through a specific question that I might have already gone through on this channel or not, and then help you apply the practical implications of that concept or keyword. So I'm probably going to look into window functions next. Hope this was helpful, and I'm going to see you next time. Bye bye.